Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring today's Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Horizon Therapeutics believes that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission to boldly change the lives of the patients and communities at horizontherapeutics.com.
Chris and I drove her to school one day when she first got her wheelchair, and we get her all buckled in, and lo and behold, we're chit-chatting, and she's had some paralysis on one side, and one-handed wheels herself across the crosswalk right over to her teachers, and both of us kind of looked at each other and laughed, and it's like, what a blessing that we get to witness this.
So glad Travis told that story because we just kind of knew that Luca was going to have all these challenges, but to see her that one day wheel that wheelchair on her own across the parking lot was, kind of an eye-opener for me. I know it was for Travis as well, to never count these kids out.
Those are our two guests this week on the Dad to Dad podcast, Chris Wade and Travis Jorgensen. Chris is a divorced dad of 3 kids, one of whom, Luca, has Wolf Hirschhorn Syndrome, a rare congenital disease. And Travis is a stepdad of sorts to Luca. Though not married to Luca's mom, Leah, he is a dedicated partner and caregiver of Luca and his siblings. Chris, Travis, and Leah all take turns caring for those 3 children. It's a unique and beneficial situation, and we'll hear all about it in this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Here's your host, David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
And now let's listen into this conversation between Chris Wade, Travis Jorgensen, and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Chris Wade and Travis Jorgensen of Kirkland, Washington. Chris is a military veteran and is the biological father of 3 children, including one with special needs. Travis has been in the auto business for the last 25 years and is a father influencer for Chris's 3 children. Chris and Travis, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Chris, you and your former wife, Leah, were married for 11 years up until about 3 years ago and are the proud parents of 3 children, older son Reese, 13, younger son Grayson, 10, and daughter Luca, 5, who has Wolf Hirschhorn Syndrome, a rare congenital disease characterized by a distinctive facial phenotype, seizures, intellectual disability, and developmental delays. For the record, I was referred to Chris by Louis Mendoza at the Washington State Fathers Network. After meeting and in advance of scheduling this interview, Chris reached out and indicated to present a more comprehensive story, I should contact Travis. Before we get started, I'd like to say I admire both of you for your transparency, your willingness to share your perspective, and your shared commitment to the well-being of these 3 children. Chris, let's start with you. Tell me something about your family and where'd you grow up?
See, I grew up in Mississippi. I was born and raised in Tupelo. I guess I come from the deep South. And I was born an only child to a government employee. My mom worked for Social Security for some 30 years or so. And my dad was a school teacher.
Excellent. I'm sort of curious to know, how would you describe your relationship with your dad?
I have 2 dads. My mom and my dad divorced when I was 2. Both went on to remarry. My biological father, he and I count him as well as my stepfather among 2 of my best friends. It hasn't always been that way, especially with my stepfather. But now, being a grown man and a father in my own right, I understand the challenges that fathers and sons have. And I'm proud to call them both friends and call them both fathers.
Excellent. So I'm wondering if you were to think about your biological dad and then your stepdad, if there's any important lesson learned or a takeaway that you think about when you think about each one of these guys.
Yeah, I think that from my dad, I definitely got my sense of humor. He's a really funny and very laid back guy, very outgoing in his own right. And from my stepfather, probably assertiveness, the complete salesman kind of mentality. He was always outspoken and very assertive, both in business and in personal relations.
Okay, good. Travis, where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
I grew up, my parents divorced when I was 5. My sister was 3. And my mom and dad were in Montana. I was born in Alaska, but we were in Helena, Montana. My mom bailed and went to Seattle. And so I've pretty much grown up in the Seattle region and lived here ever since. My dad lived in Montana as a child, so back in the day when it was safe, my sister and I would jump on the Greyhound bus and take the Greyhound bus to go see Dad for summers and winters. And life with my dad was kind of characterized by me coming home and my mom putting us in the tub and scrubbing us for 2 hours because, of course, Dad didn't make us bathe as much as Mom did. My dad was a construction guy, similar to what I do now, my whole life. And so I grew up, up on roofs when I was 3 years old and had a good relationship with my dad. When I was in my early 20s, I went and lived with my dad for about 1.5 years. I just wanted to get to know him as a person. I think when we're children, we look at our parents much different than we do when we grow up. And I wanted to make sure that I had a relationship with my dad. At some level, you can just go, oh, he gave me DNA and that's who he is. But, we have a pretty strong family on my dad's side. My dad was pretty calm about things, like didn't get riled up too much. I think I saw my dad get angry about stuff, but overall, my dad just is a very get along kind of person and not rock the boat, not make a stink. And, I think I use the good part of that trait in my life a lot to be amenable to people and to kind of look at people and see the best in them.
So what's sort of interesting is that, Chris, you grew up in the Deep South, and Travis, you were born in Alaska. And you've sort of come together, I don't know if it's equal distance, but you've come from literally different parts of the country. And I find that interesting. And you've also had some different sort of educational and career experiences as well. And not to go too deep, but Chris, from what I remember in a prior conversation, you went right into the Army out of high school. What was it that you were thinking about, and where did your service to the country take you from there?
Yeah, so I knew leaving high school, I wanted to be my independent, own guy, right? So I joined the single largest organization in the country, the United States Army. Right out of high school, I knew that I wasn't ready for college. I knew that, sticking around Houston, where I did graduate high school, was probably not such a great idea. I had a good bunch of friends, but it was also kind of a wrong crowd to be involved with idle hands. So I joined the United States Army and wound up serving in the Signal Corps, and that took me over to Germany for 3 years, Saudi Arabia for 6 months, and then got out just after Desert Shield in 1992. From there, I followed my mom and my stepdad. They had left Texas. They wound up in the East Bay, San Francisco, Contra Costa County, and went to go climb trees for 4 years as an arborist understudy, and still wasn't ready to go back to college. And to date, I still think it was my favorite job I've ever had. It was just a lot of fun, kind of a cowboy type role out there. And then I was doing the math and looking at the calendar, and the clock was ticking on the GI Bill college fund that I had earned in the Army, and knew I needed to get my butt back in school. Then I looked back at where my dad lived, still in Mississippi, at Mississippi State, and the finances just pointed to Mississippi State, and I thought it'd be a great place to go and spend some time with my grandma, my grandpa, and spend some quality time with my dad. And so that's what I did. I went back and Went to business school and majored in finance and graduated in 1999.
And from what I remember, you spent about 15 years in financial services as well.
Yeah, absolutely. About 15, 16 years in various roles, sort of in the back and middle office, managing data. And it was very mixed feelings about financial services.
Okay, well, don't say anything too bad, because you do remember that I've been working in financial services for 35 years.
Absolutely.
And, it's not for everybody. I'll just say that. Okay, Travis, back to you. From what I remember, you started college, you were focused on CAD drafting, and your life took you in a different direction. So where were you pointing, and how has that transpired?
I think for me, I grew up with a single mom, and at the kind of the tail end of graduating, we lived in if I remember right, it was a 2-bedroom apartment. My sister and I shared a bedroom, 2 twin beds on each corner of the room. And from an early age, I think I got my first job when I was 12. I, had a full-time job in high school, got good grades, but I didn't have any direction. I didn't have anybody kind of tell me what to do and how to do it, how to get through college or pay for college or anything like that. And somebody came to our career day or whatever that had this opportunity to go to a drafting school down in Arizona, and I thought that'd be a good idea. Spent 2 months on a fishing boat in Alaska, made some money, and went down to Phoenix and did basically a 12-month course to get my AA in CAD, and came back to Seattle under the guise I was going to get a job doing that. I was great at it, graduated top of my class. Every time I go to an interview, it'd be me and 60 people, because Boeing had just laid off some engineers. And so they go, well, it's you, but then we have another guy who's got a family of 3 and a mortgage and 10 years experience. So we're going to go with him because he'll take the same money. So I ended up going skiing for a season, lived on the mountain, and then kind of flopped around at different jobs. And then my best friend, who was a mechanic at a Ford store, said, hey, you're great at sales, come do sales. And I got into the car business and kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out for a couple of years, and then decided this is what I'm doing and I'm really good at it, and kind of buckled down and turned it into a career. So became a manager, I think my 6th or 7th year, and then never really looked back. And I heard a good comment the other day. It said, don't teach your children what not to do. Teach your children the things that that nobody told you. Help them kind of round them out in that experience level of, hey, I didn't learn this when I was a kid. Maybe I can teach that to, the boys or my daughters, and help improve their experience as they go through life. So.
Good words of wisdom there. Thank you for sharing. So one of the things that the 3 of us have in common is that we each grew up in a divorced family. And I know that affects each of us differently. Not all good, not all bad, but there's a lot more moving pieces, I think, when your parents don't stay together. You both have been married. Chris, you and Leah were married for 11 years and split about 3 years ago. And Travis, you were previously married and you have 2 teenage daughters. From what I remember, they're 19 and 17. And I'm wondering if you can each reflect on being married and the circumstances that you are in now. So I'll let you go first, Chris.
It's a very open-ended question. I'll do my best. I think that I learned an awful lot about my own limitations in marriage. One of the last things I ever wanted to do was get divorced. And I think that definitely came out of being a child of divorce. But boy, when it goes sideways, it really goes. When it gets bad, it gets bad, right? It came time to split. That it was the right decision, and it was one of the most painful decisions I ever made. I knew that Leah and I had a tremendous friendship at one point, and for whatever reason, we had a tough time getting back to that. And sometimes it's just kind of the right thing to do. That being said, I knew that in the marriage when we had our kids that the number one thing I wanted to be in life was a great dad. And I could tell that, she was a mother's mother. She's a phenomenal mother. I knew she was going to be a tremendous mother for my kids. And we ended up being better parents than we were spouses.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing. I know it is a difficult topic, and just appreciate your transparency and authenticity to be able to, articulate your feelings. Travis, how about yourself?
My marriage was 8.5 years long. We met and married about a year later, and been divorced like 14 years now. And similarly, my parents divorced when I was 5. I thought, hey, I'm going into this marriage. My parents are divorced. Her parents are still together. We have the best of both worlds. We know everything now. We know what not to do, what to do, and we can't go wrong, right? And I think I was young when I got married, young mentally, and maybe made choices about what I wanted and what I thought I wanted and what I really wanted and who I was. I didn't know. And we grew apart. That was really tough. It was really tough to go. My parents divorced when my kids were 5, or, when I was 5, and I don't want to do that to my kids. And I know what it was like. And then to get a divorce and carry that burden of, I screwed up, right? I did what I didn't want to do, and I made a mistake, and now how do I make the best of it? And I think that kind of weight created a lot of who I became as a divorced parent, in making sure that I did what I could to provide for my kids, and to provide for my ex. Obviously, you get divorced, you have spousal support and stuff like that. But I knew back then that my ex was going through maybe changing her career, and I wanted to help in that process, because I thought, if she's happy, my kids will be happy. And at the end of the day, maybe it wasn't the most financially sound decision, or there's lots of ways to look at it and go, what if I did this, or I could have done that. But my heart said, my kids will have a better experience in life if she's happy, and if I can promote her being happy in some way by helping her get an education or helping her financially, that's how I looked at the money that I gave to her. And it was expensive. And then the economy took a crap, and I was paying her more money than I was making. And so then I had nothing to live on and went into massive debt, and it was a tough time. But, nothing is unhandleable. And in the end, we had a couple of tough years after divorce, but we both committed that, we're in it for the kids, and we just made it work.
Let's switch gears and talk about special needs. Chris, I'm sort of curious to know, before Luca's diagnosis, did you or Leah have any experience with the special needs community?
Other than knowing a few people in my church when I was a kid, this was our first experience. 2 boys came along, Reese and Grayson, were completely typical. And so when Luca came in onto the scene, she was our first experience with special needs, and it was brand new, uncharted territory for both of us.
So the diagnosis is Wolf Hirschhorn Syndrome. How did that come about? How has it transpired?
Yeah, so the first indication that something was wrong came the day we went to go find out the sex of the baby. And one of the first things that the doctor said to us was, I see something wrong. And we didn't understand, what she was saying at the time. And she spotted something in the formation of Luca's skull. And we found out that way that, we should brace ourselves. So, fast forward, we kept thinking that, something's going to turn around. But every single ultrasound we went for still indicated that, something was wrong. And they didn't know what. She was born full term. And when she was born, everybody knew something was going on. She came out in C-section, didn't make a peep. And we found out 7 days later that it was Wolf Hirschhorn Syndrome by a genetic test.
Wow, it sounds like a pretty heavy thing to be going through. 2 kids at home already, and this pregnancy with some known complications. So the diagnosis is made at 7 days. And how did things transpire then? If you can put yourself back into that situation, what was going through your minds? What type of concerns or fears did you have at that point in time?
Well, we were terrified because the diagnosis came, a week after she was born. But like I said, when she was born, C-section, she came out. We had a friend in the room who Leah wanted her to be there, and Luca didn't make a sound when she came out, and she got whisked away. And we all knew something was really wrong. She was alive. That was the most important thing. And then, and having the 2 kids, 2 boys at home, knowing that, you got to get back and care for them. They had the mother-in-law. Leah's mom was in town for the birth as well. So it was trying to juggle the kids and, trying to keep them apprised of the situation without laying it on too thick. And then at one point in the first 24 hours, Leah called me back. She says, you got to get back to the hospital. Come over here right now. They're having trouble with Luca. And so, being sleep deprived and, terrified, drove back over to the hospital. And I walk in, and she said that she's been having problems because she hadn't been able to nurse. She just didn't have that sucking sensation to nurse, which was devastating in itself because the 2 boys had nursed until ages 4 or 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so no sooner had I arrived back in the hospital room with Leah than Luca underwent a grand mal seizure. She seized right there in front of one of the PICU specialists and 3 nurses. She stopped breathing, turned blue. And personally, I was kind of prepared for the end, just especially having seen her come out essentially lifeless, less than 24 hours earlier. But they brought her back. They didn't skip a beat. They, stuck to their training, resuscitated her. Again, this was on day 1. And so we didn't know what any sort of diagnosis was the furthest thing from our minds. Because of the grand mal seizure, that's when they initiated the genetic tests to analyze the DNA. And 6 days later, that's when we found out.
How long was she in the NICU?
I want to say 3 weeks, 21, 22 days, something like that. Okay.
So you get the diagnosis. She's in the hospital for a few weeks, and then she's ready to go home. Was there some level of normalcy, or was it just a totally different path than with the boys?
It was, the boys, Luca was born, like I said, full term, 4 pounds and like an ounce maybe. And then to see her lose weight, just like every kid does, was kind of devastating. We didn't take her home until after she had put on a little bit more weight. And when we got her home, we treated her, like a little sister. And the boys would come in and interact with her and kiss her and, just be with her. And it was bittersweet, right? Because they had their little sister at home. Everything that she had gone through at birth and in the NICU that, the odds were kind of slim. But every so often we were just kind of given a glimmer of hope that there was going to be something for her. And the boys are certainly a part of that.
Was there some some meaningful advice you got early on that helped you navigate what sounds like a pretty challenging situation?
I don't know. I can't pinpoint a single piece of advice, but I think Leah's maternal instincts were so strong that I simply listened to her and followed her. I considered myself kind of a supporting actor, if you will. And she was the director, and Luca was the star of the show.
That's not too uncommon. I'm not to focus on the negative, but just to be, I guess, realistic about it. What were the biggest challenges that first year, the last few years for that matter?
Oh, yeah. The getting used to the bells and whistles that came along. When Luca came home, she came home with a bunch of machinery, is how I put it. We had to master an NG tube, which was inserted through her nostril down into her belly to get her nutrition. We were reliant on breast milk solely for nutrition, and the only way to do that was through the tube. You had to rely essentially on a pump 24/7 to get that nutrition down into her belly, and just trying to navigate that tube through the nasal cavity was rough. Sometimes in the middle of the night it would come out and you wouldn't know it until you realized the bed sheets were soaked with breast milk. New parents don't get enough sleep as it is, and then when you have this little pump beeping at you every hour or so, it makes it that much more difficult.
Well, thanks for sharing. I'm sort of curious to know what impact has Luca's situation had on her older brothers, Reese and Grayson.
Oh man, I don't know. I think that they're extremely well grounded. They've been fantastic. It's not easy being a sibling of a special needs kid, and I'm just thankful every day that they had each other to play with and run around with while we were attending to Luca. These guys had each other.
Yeah, well, that is a benefit that it's not just one older sibling, but there's the two of them, and they're relatively close in age, so that they can, be brothers, right, and sort of do whatever brothers do. And I'm sort of curious to know what supporting organizations have you relied on as a family for Luca's benefit, for that matter?
Yeah, the Seattle area is just rife with organizations. Early on, we found out about Kindering. It's a organization supported by the county and the state, and they do a number of functions, just with kids and special needs kids. And associated with Kindering is the Washington State Fathers Network, and the work that Louis Mendoza has been doing, heading up the organization currently. And fell in with a bunch of guys about 3 years back and got super acquainted with the world of special needs dads. And then from not necessarily day one, but as soon as Seattle Children's found out about Luca, and Evergreen here in Kirkland made their referral to Seattle Children's, and the Seattle Children's Hospital has been a tremendous organization. And in fact, we were lucky enough to get a full ride based on economics, essentially. And so couldn't have done everything we've done without any of those organizations.
And did you mention previously that there's a Wolf Hirschhorn Pacific Northwest group, a group of parents that you are connected to as well, or not?
Yeah, that's right. We currently during COVID, nobody's really meeting up, especially knowing that the immunodeficiency challenges a lot of these kids have. Everybody's kind of staying at home. But we did get to meet quite a number of families here in the Pacific Northwest that also had older adult children with Wolf Hirschhorn Syndrome. And it's ironic. Well, not ironic. I guess it's just a product of timing. We found out Luca's diagnosis. We found out after 7 days, and we've met 20-year-old and 30-year-old Wolf Hirschhorn patients that went 2 decades or more and didn't know what it was that they had because they didn't have a genetic test for it when they were born. So we were really lucky, I think, to find out as early as we did.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. And the last group or organization that you made reference to previously, and I had not heard of this before, and I think it's more of an informal network, is something along the lines of Human Milk for Human Babies. What is that all about?
Yeah, so what's really special is Human Milk for Human Babies here in Seattle. It's a really strong Facebook page of mothers with excess breast milk. You've got some mothers who are just factories for the stuff. They just make more than their kids will ever need. And when we found out about it, we thought we were going to be lucky enough to get, a month or two supply of breast milk because, your kid really needs to nurse for that production to stay up. Well, Luca's mom wasn't able to keep up that production. And so we fell in at some point along the way with Facebook and this Facebook page. And, mom's just logging in and saying, hey, I might have 50 ounces here. And another mom would say, I got 20 ounces there. And so it's been 5.5 years now, and my baby girl has never gone a day without donated breast milk from other moms. So it's been one of the most important, sort of life-giving sources, because to this day, and it's just kind of a testament to how much importance other moms put on that breast milk. And it's just, it's reassuring to know that they make it available and freely available.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. It does sound like it's a life-sustaining experience, literally a life-sustaining experience. So, Travis, back to you. So I'm sort of curious to know, when you met Leah, how did this sort of topic of having not only children, but a child with special needs come up? What was your first sort of awareness or realization of that?
We met because I was doing some volunteer work serving the homeless in Seattle, and a mutual friend of ours reached out to me because I was posting on Facebook about it, and she reached out to me and said, hey, I have a couple friends that would like to join me and go out with you to do this volunteer work. And I was like, great, and show up. That's when I met Leah. I had no idea she was single or anything. But we just hit off and talked all night and had a good time and ended up having coffee the next day. And, I was single and she was a single mom, and I guess I would be called a single dad. And she brought it up right away. She's like, I need to tell you that I have a daughter with special needs. And I was like, okay, my dad divorced and had 3 more kids, so he had a total of 5. My younger sister has 5 kids. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't get the opportunity to brag about my 5 kids, luckily, because I'm with Leah and her kids and my 2 that are almost grown. And I just find it a blessing. I mean, the fact is I love children, and to be able to have them in my life it just brings more to my life, it's not a takeaway. I don't lose anything because I have 3 more kids in my life. I gain so much more. So that's my perspective, I guess.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. I don't know that that's the typical reaction that most men would have when they learn that this woman that they become friendly with, if I can sort of go back to the volunteer experience, some guys are wired to be dads and enjoy being around kids more than just their own. That would fit your situation. And I know there's a lot of dads that are like, hey, I've already got my own kids, paid my dues. I'm looking to be a little bit more flexible and less committed, I guess, is the word that comes to mind. And, it seems like just the right situation, right, all around for where you're at in your own life and with your own way of looking at things.
When you talk about that, I think it's perspective, right? Somebody chooses a perspective to have. Neither is right nor wrong, but the perspective of I'm free, I can do whatever I want. I mean, I can do whatever I want now. I just choose to spend more of my time with my family and create the family experience. I still do lots of stuff on my own, but I also get to come home and sit down and have a warm dinner with the kids and my girlfriend, and my kids come over every Sunday night. We have a big family meal, and Chris and my ex have come over for Thanksgiving and I think Christmas dinners all together, just as a big, crazy family.
It sounds like there might be some script material for some type of TV program, but that's not my expertise. I'm just saying it's very noble. That's the word that comes to mind, to be able to be that open-minded and inclusive, right? Which I think, again, is what we all, I think, need more of in today's day and age. But I'm wondering, what, if any, fears or concerns do you have about taking on this type of responsibility, not just on a short-term, sort of intermediate-term basis, but potentially on a long-term basis?
I can't even tell you how many days I spent at Children's Hospital, or chasing an ambulance to Children's Hospital, or standing over this child having a seizure with 30 nurses and doctors, and being scared out of my mind. If you see that and you don't have your heartstrings tugged at, then you're not cut out to be a human. I don't think. It's just a human experience. And with Luca, I look at her and she is the epitome of pure joy. Like, if she's not in pain and she's not having a seizure, she's happy. Like, she wakes up happy, she goes to bed happy, she giggles all the time. She is, she taught me more about letting it roll off your back and being happy than probably anybody else. She could have this traumatic experience, be in the hospital, laying in her bed, and then just start giggling because she's happy. And that says a lot, and somebody could dissect it any way you want to, but I look at it as how it affects me. And, I can't imagine being anywhere else. And before COVID hit, we would go to the hospital and Chris would be there and Leah and I would be there. And, I remember one night it was Leah and I sleeping on that couch bed kind of thing that's the most uncomfortable thing in a hospital. And Chris was sleeping in the chair and we're all there just to take care of Lou.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. It's more apparent to me now, having listened to both of you, that Luca is really the beneficiary here. She might be growing up in a divorced household, right? That's one way to look at it. But what I realize, it's very clear, crystal clear to me, is that she has these two amazing men, the both of you, who are there for her, right? And it might not be traditional, right? The nuclear family type of traditional, but the net result is that she's not got just one dad, but two dads or father figures in her life, and I think that that's very powerful. And I just want to say thank you again for sharing each of your perspectives. It's enlightening. So I'm sort of curious to know, under the banner of advice, if there's a piece of advice that you can share with a dad, maybe a dad like yourself, who's divorced, who has kids, special needs or otherwise, advice that you'd like to share, maybe beyond what you've already mentioned, to help that dad who might be struggling with this situation. And Chris, I'll let you go first.
One of the other things I'd like to, reiterate with Luca, being Wolf Hirschhorn Syndrome being, of all things, a seizure disorder, was that her mom and I had to look doctors in the face and tell them that they were wrong. When you have that little voice inside, you have to listen to it. And for us, we simply had to. And what I'm getting at is, with regards to Luca, is that, from the day she was born with that grand mal seizure until about, 5 months of age, she was reliant on phenobarbital to control her seizures. And Leah and I both knew that this phenobarbital was just not going to be the answer for her, because it was robbing Luca of her personality. And so we started looking for alternatives. And, this was 5 years ago. Today it's much more prominent, but back then it was just kind of starting out as a whole idea of medical marijuana, specifically the CBD oil. And so we fell in and started doing some research. And we eventually came to the conclusion that we needed to get Luca on that CBD oil, and we needed to do it fast. And so we started exploring that alternative through a circle of families with Dravet syndrome kids. And we started seeking them out. And there's a pretty tight-knit group up here of Dravet families, and they told us about their experience with CBD oil, and that's what set us on the path, getting Luca or CBD oil. I know it's a big tangential kind of story, but sometimes the doctors are wrong, and the parents just really need to listen to themselves. And I think that above and beyond anything else, that's what I would say. Listen to your gut, listen to your heart, and trust your instincts. When it came to the CBD oil, my daughter's been on it since the six months of age, and we pay for that out of pocket. Insurance obviously is not going to cover anything like that. But I think it was one of the largest, biggest life-changing things for her.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing, Chris. So back to you, Travis. I'm wondering if there's any advice that you can share with that dad who might be listening, who's struggling because he finds himself in a non-custodial situation.
I thought about this interview coming up in this morning when I woke up at 4:30 because Luca was crying in her bed and ready to get up, which happens a lot, about the benefit of being with a child with special needs and being in this, co-parenting relationship with Chris and with Leah, blending our families and contributing to the overall well-being of a special needs child. You have to look at it like the plus, right? I mean, if you had a child, if your child goes to school and has one teacher versus your child goes to school and has 7, which one's going to be a bigger benefit? I think that me and coming into the situation is just a plus for Lou, and sometimes a plus for Chris and a plus for Leah as well, because I want him to be the best dad he can be with his kids, and I want to be the best, parental role to his children as well, because at some point they're my children. And they're not my biological children, but when they're with me, I want to give them, as much love as I can and support them as well. The cutest kid. Chris and I drove her to school one day when she first got her wheelchair, and we get her all buckled in, and lo and behold, we're chit-chatting, and she's had some paralysis on one side, and one-handed wheels herself across the crosswalk right over to her teachers as if she's the boss, and both of us kind of looked at each other and laughed, and it's like, what a blessing that we get to witness this.
It's interesting. I'm so glad Travis told that story because I remember, being thrilled that the kindergartners with special needs here at the Lake Washington School District here in Kirkland were being allowed to attend school and to give her mom a break. Every special needs parent needs a break at some point. And, we had been told that, or we just kind of knew that Luca's going to have all these challenges, but to see her that one day wheel that wheelchair on her own across the parking lot was, kind of an eye opener for me. I know it was for Travis as well, to never count these kids out and never discount their abilities, because they will surprise you and they'll do it when you least expect it.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. Chris and Travis, thank you for your time and many insights. As a reminder, Chris and Travis are just two of the dads who are part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stcenturydads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Chris and Travis, thanks again.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
And thank you for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, presented by the Special Fathers Network. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for fathers to support fathers. Go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stcenturydads.org.
The Dad to Dad podcast was produced by Couch Audio for the Special Fathers Network. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.